just for shiz and gigs. Let's explore how a flat Earth would need to be hidden from everyone on the planet if they started to lie that the Earth is round over 200 years ago, hypothetically of course and for entertainment purposes. It would likely start with the maps. They need to make sense on a globe. Mapping was funded and controlled by only a few people back then, and normal citizens had no way to just travel the Earth and map it themselves. Even today, many maps show the United States as much larger than Africa, and that's not even remotely accurate. Our maps have been distorted lies for centuries now. It's not as if they couldn't get away with changing our maps if they needed or wanted to. Only approved maps were distributed to everyday citizens. If cartographers wanted funding, they would have to change the maps as requested. Sometimes even maps done through professional surveys would be rejected by the powers that be, whether they were hiding a flat Earth or not. They definitely took some of the steps they'd need to if they were. Next, they would need to capture the entire education system worldwide. Owning the textbook companies and deciding what does and doesn't go into them would be key. Controlling what teachers are trained to teach, so it becomes a self-sustaining system of indoctrination. You'd be surprised how powerful anchoring bias can be. Once people have believed something long enough, it's almost impossible to convince them otherwise. The elites did just this for other purposes. The Rockefellers basically owned our public education for a long while. From textbook contents to teacher training programs, they controlled it all. So flat Earth or not, once again, they took the same steps they would have needed to in order to hide a flat Earth from us. They set to turn the population into compliant workers, but it could have just as easily been for other reasons as well. John D. Rockefeller was the richest person in the country and equal to 1.5% of the U.S. GDP at the time and would be worth $280 billion today. The Rockefellers were just the first elites controlling education. Robert Maxwell was a more modern example of elites doing this, the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend. Why do shady elites always care so much about education? It's definitely not because they want all of us more educated, that's for sure. And when you control so much of the system, you have the power to gatekeep things like peer review and journals. It's always some super rich elite that owns these journals. It's an anonymous group of people that decide whether research papers even get seen by the journals in the first place. It's much more of a filter of control than people realize over what information gets taken seriously and what theories they decide are just crazy. Once again, it just falls right in line with how they have to hide a flat Earth. There's also the strange connection that Jeffrey Epstein was said to have to academia. Financial executive Eric Weinstein has talked about Epstein's strange connection to Harvard. Weinstein also spoke about how Epstein seemed like he didn't know much at all about finance, even though he was said to be a financier. Epstein seemed to keep a close eye on scientific advances for some strange reason, which is something they'd put a person in place to do if they were hiding something as major as a flat Earth. Just saying, it all starts fitting together almost too well. The toughest part of controlling education would be having to design fake science that's good enough to fool even the most intelligent experts on the planet. They'd have to create fake constants to bridge the gaps between the real equations and the ones being used by the people that don't know the entire truth. Sure, it sounds crazy and impossible, but once people are taught something for 200 years, they will scoff at the idea of it being wrong. Imagine if someone came out today trying to tell everyone that gravity doesn't exist, that it was just invented to cover something else up. Nobody would even listen to that person. When the truth is we're not nearly as certain about all of our science as people think we are. Even this year, there are new theories stating we might have been wrong about gravity.
Incredible.
It just goes on forever.
Of course,
And
on a
look
flat
at the
Earth, we have to
colors.
keep people away from the edges. Antarctica would be a giant ice wall around the entire edge of our planet we'd have to keep hidden. Sounds impossible, right? But oddly enough, Antarctica is kept pretty secretive. Travel to Antarctica is pretty limited, and in the 1950s a treaty was signed by 12 countries. All 12 pretty much agreed Antarctica was off limits. Countries like the Soviet Union and the United States agreed on this treaty at a time when they were active enemies. There's now currently 58 countries signed on to the treaty. Probably more countries agreeing on that treaty than anything else in history. I'm not claiming they're protecting an ice wall, just that they're doing exactly what they would if they were. There's all kinds of reasons they give for the lack of commercial flights. Plenty of reasons for chartered flights only going to specific locations. And maybe they're telling the truth. But they certainly don't have the same rules for the North Pole and the Arctic up there. Flat Earth or not, it sure seems like they're hiding something in Antarctica. There's also the Admiral Byrd story about what he saw down there. But that's a whole different video. As technology advanced, they'd need to control the answers new technology would reveal to people. Photography would have been a big one. Maybe it's impossible to control photography forever. They definitely could have steered things in the direction they wanted if they planned it from the beginning of photography, though. Spend decades selling lies to people, and they'll never believe anything other than that lie. They'd have to control all the equipment as well, though, and craft them so they give people the answers they want people to have, and not the real answers hidden beneath. Maybe parts crafted in ways that do the lying for the elites. If one generation teaches the next to build something a certain way, and then that generation teaches the next, and so on and so on. A few generations down the line, it's just common sense things are built in that way. Why question it if it's working the way it's already designed? It's just working the way they designed so. Of course, at the beginning of this huge lie, the elites would just buy all the companies making these instruments. Or the government will take control of manufacturing of them. Maybe it wasn't the cameras they changed to lie to us. Maybe it was something or many things. We're not even thinking about being wrong. As I've said before, I'm not saying anyone did any of these things. I'm just pointing out they could have, if they had wanted to. What about space, though? The space race? I won't get into what space would even mean for a flat Earth. This video is about how they'd hide it, not what flat Earth claims are exactly. Faking it wouldn't be as impossible as people think, though. Especially if the country we were supposed to be at war with was actually helping sell the illusion.
We present this to the world as competition, but we both know the truth. A necessary deception, we are agreed.
What better cover for a secret alliance than a Cold War with each other? All while the show of competing to get to the moon first is actually just a distraction from the truth and the flat Earth. Enemies in the public eye, but actually allied elitist gatekeepers. I'm not saying space is fake, and I'm not saying the Earth is flat, but I am saying if they wanted to hide either of those things, it's way more possible to do than people realize.
They are starting to question the official story. We must tighten the flow of information immediately. The new algorithm
Can bury
Speaking of media manipulation, they would have started with the newspapers as far back as possible. Between the press barons and then government involvement, newspapers were controlled pretty quickly. Real journalism takes a back seat when your newspaper won't even exist without their funding. Even the days of just newspapers, the elites still had total control over what information we're allowed to receive. Then came television, which would be tougher to control, but not impossible. Right off the bat, tycoons like Ford took almost complete control of broadcasting. The Ford Foundation put over $90 million into controlling what got aired on TV through the 50s and the 60s. The foundation funded national education television, which would later become PBS. When have the elites ever funded anything? Because they want us all better informed. By the time most families owned a television, the big three owned almost all news broadcasts. These three companies would maintain total control for the most part all the way up to current day. For decades and decades, it was the people in charge of three different corporations that decided what we are allowed to know about. Now it's six conglomerates who control all mass media, and they all have investors in common agendas. It wasn't until the internet gave us more reach and freedom that people like me were able to say, "What if?" to the masses. But they would make sure that if anyone did start catching on to the truth and started telling other people, well, those people are just crazy or stupid. I mean, it's probably what a lot of people that watch this video will think about this video. It's the entire reason the term conspiracy theorist was coined in the first place. Anyone that dare to think outside the box is a nutcase. And if all of this is what they really did, well, they've done a great job at fooling everyone. If they did all of this starting over 200 years ago, I don't think any of us would even know the correct questions to ask. They'd have us living in a completely made-up world and reality that they built specifically to create good workers, not thinkers. Like I said a couple times already, I'm not claiming the earth is flat or even that it could be. But anyone that actually believes there's no way they could hide something like that from us is exactly the type of person they set out to create.
Like, subscribe, and comment for more.